It's great to have this conversation, Amrik. I'm Alasdair, and I'll just begin, but let's talk together. It, it is the middle of September 2024. Just over 4 weeks ago, we had the most extraordinary um, uh, playing out of something in our country, which was the riots. And I admit, my reaction was one of being utterly appalled. I was dismayed and quite shaken, actually.
Mm.
Um, but I was acutely aware that I could walk out to my front door, not
Mm.
just because there was less immediate activity in my neighborhood, but being a white man. And that, nevertheless, I felt unseated because I was aware that others, this was impacting in a very different way. But Amrik, where were you with that? 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago now?
Yeah. I suppose for clarity, it that happened in England and uh, Northern Ireland, Belfast. I think that's different
Yes. Yeah.
um, because of our multicultural love of the United Kingdom. We love being British. I know with your
Mhm.
Scottish heritage and my links. So there's something very particular about it being in England. I found um, uh, hard actually,
Mhm.
and also because so many assumptions came out straight away immediately afterwards. It did take me back to Black Lives Matter and the events that happened in, but there was something different about this. This felt um and still feels an involving something. The themes feel
Yeah.
familiar. They're our themes, I
Yes.
guess, is probably what I'm. Whereas whilst the George Floyd um, untimely, unnecessary death, there was still a sense for me of distance. Whereas this is our streets where we walk, and that did bring up stuff from ancient stuff from the 70s and the 80s, and
Absolutely.
uh, yeah, I
Yeah, and
suppose
I
that was
think
the bit.
it's interesting and very poignant that, of course, it's for you. It's George Floyd and some of these the race riots in, as you described, the 70s, the 80s, and onward. And while there was a lot of attention given to this, hasn't happened for since 2011.
Mm,
That was a very different. It was nevertheless serious, but it was very, very different. This was against people. This
yeah.
was not against property, and there is, of course, a material difference there. And I, I realized I partly just I felt this. I wanted initially just vengeance.
Mm,
That thing of lock them up and that whole thing. I'm not proud of it, but it just I felt that on behalf of my brothers and sisters
yeah.
and our nation. Yeah, I mean, I'm Scottish. I do. This is. I've been in England for more years than I've been in Scotland, and
Yeah.
it is dear to my heart. But for you, this came closer.
I suppose, and here's a shocking admission. I didn't share this with you on that private piece I did for you, um, but I think I got a bit. Forgive the shorthand, but a bit meh. It was Claire, my wife. Her reaction was the one that I found most. Oh, I better get my emotional space back in here. And she described the notion of it's always it's there's one hand being anti-racist intellectually. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But to feel it of being on even through the prism of the experience of being
yeah,
fearful of walking your streets just because of something you can't help, like the color of your skin,
mm,
and and then obviously she said that to me in the morning, in one of the mornings we've worked across the country, and she went, I suddenly realised my husband could just be in the wrong time at the wrong
yeah,
place,
yeah, yeah.
and she
It's
found that the most visceral experience. She goes, well, now this is personal to me because,
Yeah.
and I suppose it was bizarrely through the intimacy we have and the intimacy you and I have that I feel you get a sense of the shock of it. Whereas
Wow.
I
Yes.
did get a bit.
Yeah.
I can't. I wouldn't say blasé or compliment, but or not
No.
complacent. But
Yeah.
we had moved, or not moved on. But George Floyd was at some
Yeah.
distance now, and I may have just got into the stuff. So I'm
I
not being
get
very
that.
articulate here, but this we can
No, I get that. I
redo the
mean,
film.
as you talked earlier, initially you pointed to your head. It was
Mm.
cerebral. It was in your head. Where you just described your wife experiencing.
Yeah,
Claire felt it,
yeah,
and that goes. It went to the heart of that experience of threat,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
very real.
yeah.
And yeah, and
So
I
it'd be
think that
like if you and I walk down the streets. I mean,
yeah,
we walk down some streets, let's say,
we
aren't
have
particularly favourable, and I think it would occur to you, go, actually, one of us is actually at threat, although
mm,
just by the physical difference. Um, and in our country now, I know there's arguments, and I absolutely agree that in other countries, India's very dismal, that if you're of darker skin, if you're a Muslim, the threat's there. I'm not at all denying that. But for us, though, I think it's that first bit. So my emotional world is very complex and complicated because of the processes of being in my relationship and relatively new relationship as well, in of what this stuff means. And again, after a while, you go, meh, yeah, it's
yeah,
racist, blah blah blah,
yeah,
and then it comes up and you go, oh. Again, before we go
absolutely.
into what we do, I think a couple of things that we may keep um,
Mm,
is I think it is important to realize that my nieces and nephews, we did say you're not allowed to go out,
yeah,
not, and it's the first time they've experienced that sense of, but I'm British. Well, yeah, but for
yeah,
this weekend, you're not going out.
and that's massive.
Yeah,
That is
that's where it
massive.
comes. That's where the sense
Yeah,
of we're not really we, as if
yeah,
I can speak for every brown Asian person, but certainly
no,
in the family groups I had, there was a sense of, oh, so we're not really welcome then.
yeah. And many, I heard the expression, "This isn't our country. This isn't
Yeah,
us." Uncomfortable as it is, what it is our country.
yeah,
That this
yeah,
is a reality, and we've talked. I'm interested to think now, having talked about how we reacted,
yeah,
and just in all our honesty, where we went with it. Part of our work together, Amrik, which we've been on this progression together in the kind of work we've been doing, is about how we respond.
yeah. So here's the bit where we, you and I, and the company, we're a small company. I mean, let's, and we got to be pragmatic, and many better minds and better hearts have been working at this for a while. So, I don't think what we're trying to do is particularly original either, but I do think the expression of that is original. That's us in our company. And I think the conclusion I got to is this headline, and I don't know where you sit with this, is that we're in danger of othering the other. And what I mean by that
Wow.
is those people who got caught up in the riots, racism may be one reason. It could be boneheaded stupidness, it could be boredom. And I just cannot believe that the motivations of a 69-year-old male are the same as a 13, 14-year-old kid. That just doesn't work with me. The behaviors are shocking and frightening and an abhorrence to me, but it is the behaviors. And so I suppose if we then demonize those very people, we forget that they're brothers, sisters, husbands, fathers, and is it that they're not being seen or heard or valued? And there's some of the research seems to come back to that point.
Yeah. Wow.
I
I
don't know
mean,
where you sit with that because
well, in my
that's
head,
hard for me.
when I hear that in my head, I do get that, but I have to admit, there's part of me that finds that generosity almost annoying.
Yeah, yeah,
How can you be so generous in the face of what's happened when your nieces and nephews have not been able to go out on the street? Now, you don't have to answer that. I know you well enough, so I know that's where you would go, but it's not easy, I guess.
No, it's not.
But
I part of me wants to punch myself, forgive the metaphor. I find it
yeah,
very. Part of me goes, "Oh, that's weak. You got to be stronger." But
yeah,
we know punishment doesn't work. We just
no,
constantly undermining people just doesn't work.
no,
Now, I don't think. I mean, I can talk to you about what I really think should happening around policies and politics, but it's secondary to the point is we've done some work. You and I do work, and I'm also including the others in the company: Lynn, Emma, Lucas,
mm,
Helen. We've stretched into places where voices we would never have a million years thought would connect with us. Different class, different
yeah,
social structures, and that is probably where I'm more inspired by those people's openness than anything to do, particularly to do with me.
yeah.
I don't, so that's very lovely to say. And I'm not saying it's easy, so I don't feel particularly comfortable with it, but I'm comfortable enough to
Yes.
to offer that. But
Yeah, no, I hear that, and that's all we, I guess, it is recognizing that the if we're to bring hope into this, we have
yeah,
to find a way to respond to this, to deal with this, that is that is not just the same old script,
yeah,
and that's hard, but it does make sense that to firstly go into this, we think of the values of, or the spirit of the motivational skills approach, firstly, always with kindness. But what does that look like in the face of threats and demonization and racist taunting?
yeah. And we've got. I mean, I'm going to kind of probably bring to a bit of a kind of well, not an ending. These things never end, but we lead a and you lead an organization about hope, about
Mm,
faith in
mm,
human beings, in the potential for change. When you think about it, change really is about faith in the future.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I suppose that's the bit where by we don't know, and even Carl Rogers' stuff, he talks about positive regard, separation of behaviors, unconditional kindness, loving kindness. You, so the great philosophers, the great philosophies always come back to that point. I'm not saying we are the great or good in that way, but we can try to do something of it, and it's got to be embodied. And I'm not saying we're perfect at it. I'm not saying we're particularly
no,
wonderful about it, but and I and there is a voice, a story there that isn't being heard or witnessed, and that's probably
yeah,
in that small ways all we have. But no, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I don't know
no,
any other
it's
way.
no, it's brilliant. And actually, as you say, we're not alone in this. We tried to do something refreshing. It isn't unique. I was thinking, of course, the high-profile example of the imam in
Mm,
Liverpool was
yeah,
a very powerful example of you offer bread
yeah, you do.
in the face of threats. And that came to me as I thought about that. Well, how do we do this? And there are many ways we do this. And I suppose you and I, we've tried to do it as you describe it, conversation by conversation,
Yeah,
and engaging with rather than demonizing or othering even someone we find their beliefs repugnant. Nevertheless, that's where we're at, and we begin with curiosity.
and I think
Um,
you
yeah,
particularly with the company you're trying to lead wants this to be embodied,
yeah,
and therefore we can be flawed, but we're embodied. So I suppose our response, I show you my summary, and then maybe you want to share yours. Really,
mm,
is that we're trying to be authentic in this conversation about how we are having to listen to our own emotions and our hearts and go, oh,
yes,
that's a bit sore. Oh, I don't like that about myself.
yeah,
And by doing so, hopefully, when we're in the space, we say, well, look, I'm with you alongside you here. Let's just hear each other without judgment, because that's the one thing that's guaranteed to entrench thoughts and ideas.
yeah. No, that's brilliant, because actually, as you say, we are flawed.
Yeah.
We struggle in all sorts of ways, but alongside, if we can do that as you describe, I find that moving. I find that the potential for that is limitless. But again, not altogether easy in the face of provocation, which is the territory that sometimes that this would be in. And then we can, I mean, we may not do this now, but I think what we'll do over the weeks and months to come is look at step by step.
Yeah, I feel that could be useful. And also, if we see things around sexism or homophobic attacks or trans, that we may well come back to the same themes, but I suppose it's, let me say this another way. Yes, it's not original, but I often say in the facilitation room, but our expression of that today is original. How we do it today is original, is unique.
Yeah.
Because we've only got ourselves and we're trying to put that together. So maybe that's the bit we can come back to step by steps in certain themes.
Brilliant. Yeah, this moment. Well, to this very moment, Amrik, thank you for beginning this conversation. And this, I think, could be really rich as we take it from here into exploring how we'd use this approach of motivational skills into all these different issues, but particularly in response to what's happened in, dare I say, dear England.
Yes.
That we will we want to progress hopefully and optimistically. Thanks, Amrik.
Thanks, Alasdair.